All right, guys, back in the garage. I think this is the #1 requested how-to tips and tricks video for my channel. For years, people have been requesting this. So here it is. It's the little run through of my kayak and kind of what I've learned over the past 3 years of kayak fishing. I'm by no means an expert. I've only been doing it for a few years. There's people who've been in the game for a lot longer than I have, but this is what I've learned. And hopefully if you have a kayak, maybe you learn something about how, I've set up mine to optimize the fish catching ability of my kayak. And if you're new to kayak fishing, this will kind of give you an idea of the cost, the setup, and just give you some information about kayak fishing, what you're getting into, because it seems really easy on videos, but there's a lot of things that go into it. And it's not super difficult. I actually think that owning a kayak is much easier than owning a boat, for example. But there is a few things that you need to think about before you buy one. So anyways, let's get into it. So here, first off, sorry, there's a whole box of my merch in the way. Totally didn't mean for that to be there. But while it's here, if you want some, you can always get some on my website, diehardfish.com. Let me get that out of the way so you can see the kayak. There it is in all its glory. So there's a good little view of it, at least from the front perspective. I'm gonna kind of break this video into 3 parts. 1, the front part, 2, the back part, and then 3 is gonna be like the main portion of the video. The bulk is the middle. So first off, let's start with the front. Okay, before I even show you my kayak and everything in here, let me first talk about which kayak I have. Now this right here, this is a Hobie Outback 2013. So first and foremost, I'm not sponsored by any kayak companies. If you're a kayak company out there and you want to hit me up, feel free to. So maybe someday I will be, but for now, this is just my personal opinion. So this is a Hobie Outback, like I said, and I'm just gonna focus on Hobie for now, just because it makes it easier to think about. So for Hobie, there's basically 4, maybe 5 main kayaks, fishing pedal kayaks that they have. So there's the Hobie Outback, which is this one. Or actually, I'm gonna start from most expensive. So the most expensive is the Pro Angler. There's 2 versions of the Pro Angler, which is kind of the biggest, most fancy decked out kayak. Then after that, I think the next most expensive is the Hobie AI, Adventure Island. Then below that, I think is probably the Outback, and then below that is Revo, the Hobie Revolution, and then the last one is the Hobie Sport. So let me start off with, I'm gonna start knocking off certain ones to show you why I didn't get any of those and I ended up with this one. So the first one is the Hobie Pro Angler. So for me, you can kind of see in the background actually here, I drive a Toyota Corolla, so I have to car top my kayak. The Pro Angler is nice, it's really nice, but you can't really car top it, especially with a Corolla, because it's so heavy, it's so bulky. So for that reason, it's nearly impossible to car top, especially on my Corolla. So personally, as a 1-person fisherman, I wouldn't want to do that. And also to transport it on the sand, off the beach, on the beach, stuff like that is just a big pain. So anyways, that's why I didn't get that one. It's also really expensive. The next one is the Adventure Island. So the Adventure Island is a really nice kayak. I mean, if you watch one of my buddies, Nick Fish, he has an Adventure Island. It's a super long kayak, a lot longer than the Outback, and a little bit skinnier. And then he also has the outrigger. So I think he has 2 outriggers. Usually he just uses one with the trampoline in there to balance it out a little bit, and then he can use a sail. So honestly, that one is really nice, and I could see why he uses it all the time. You can get a sail, like I said, so you can sail around without having to pedal the whole time. It's very stable once you put on the outriggers, and it's nice to have that trampoline to store stuff on the side. But for me, I don't know, it's a little bit big, a little more trouble to put the outriggers on. And one thing you have to think about with those is, 1, it adds weight when you're transporting. So I probably could car top it with all that stuff, but it would be more of a hassle. And then also, launching it in the surf is a little bit tricky, because once you put the outriggers on, you can't paddle very well, at least. So actually one time he did a major flip in the surf, which was epic. It's too bad I didn't make it to his channel because it was pretty funny, but anyways. that's beside the point. That's why I don't get that. It's a little bit trickier to transport, and then it's also a little bit harder to surf launch. So other than that, that's a really nice kayak. Then there's the Outback, which I'll talk about plenty more as we go on in the video. Below that, which is probably the next kayak that I would consider if I wasn't fishing an Outback, is the Hobie Revolution. Now the Revolution is a little bit skinnier, and it's about the same length as the Outback. So what does that mean? That means it's gonna be a little bit more tippy, not as stable, but what you sacrifice in stability, you're gonna gain in speed. So it doesn't drag as much, obviously, so when you're pedaling, you can get a lot more speed, and you're not having to work as hard to get that speed. So, for salmon trolling, for example, that's kind of the way to go. I mean, like I said, if I wasn't using this one, and honestly, I'm kind of considering getting one, maybe someday I will, but yeah, so that's the Hobie Revolution. And the last one that I talked about was the Hobie Sport. So that's also a pedal kayak, but the problem with that one is it's a little bit shorter than the Outback. I don't know about width. I think it might be a little bit skinnier, not too much, but it's just a little bit small. So for me, I have to carry my camera stuff as well as my fishing stuff. So it would work, yes, but I just like to have the extra space. And then especially if you're taking in the ocean, bigger is always better in terms of like handling the swell and the wind and all that stuff. So for ocean wise, I'd rather go with the Outback than the Sport. It's just gonna be a little bit safer and allow you to carry a little more. So that's where I landed on the Hobie Outback. It's kind of like the medium between all of those kayaks. It's got like average size, average width, average price range, well, actually I shouldn't say average price range. It's pretty expensive. All the Hobies are expensive in terms of kayaks, but compared to the other Hobies, it's kind of in the middle of the price range. So, okay, now let's run through the kayak. So we got the nose of the kayak with the handle here, a couple of little tie downs if you need them. I never use these. The main portion of the front here is the front hatch. So if I open that up here, we'll get you in closer. This is where I store all of my things that I don't really need too often, but I might need to get to, because it is accessible while I'm out in the water, but it's a little bit difficult to get to. So in here, I'll put these things like my tackle boxes, non-essential like items that I'm not using right away. If I need to like retie a leader or something, I'll be able to get in here to get some of this stuff. But I'll leave all this stuff in here. I also leave like, if I have an extra like jacket or something, I'll throw it in here, stuff like that. You can see in here I also have a battery holder. You might be able to see that, which I used to use for a 9-volt battery or 12-volt battery, sorry, but I don't use anymore. This is just like a backup if my main battery doesn't work, which I'll talk about later in the video. But anyways, there's a front hatch. It ties down like this. It's water resistant, but it's not waterproof. Water definitely will get in there. So if you do put anything in here that you don't want to get wet, make sure you put it in a dry bag. Okay, so here's the back of the kayak. So as you can see, there's this little well right here, and this is where I'll put one of two things. Either put all of my like miscellaneous gear. This is way more accessible. So like my measuring device, my stringer, stuff like that. I can throw all this in here. And then I have a kayak bag, a kill bag for my catch that I'll put on top of it. Or if I want to carry an ice chest, I'll just put an ice chest in here. I have an ice chest. I actually have 2 ice chests. One's a little bigger that kind of fits in here, but it's a little bulky. The other one fits in here really nicely. I'll put the ice chest in here. So that's this little thing. Then there's 2 rod holders. You can see one here, and then I don't know if you can see it, but there's 3 ram mounts right here. Honestly, these also came with the kayak. These I don't really need, but I do use one as a camera mount. So if you weren't filming, personally I wouldn't recommend getting these because it just kind of gets in the way, but that's what those are right there. Then we have our back hat. If you have a Hobie, most likely, and you bought it new, most likely it came with a spare rudder pin in this back hatch. So anyways, and if you don't, you should probably get one and put one in here. So that's where that hides, because as you've probably seen on my channel, this rudder pin in the back can potentially break. But anyways, so that's where that is. But other than that, this back hatch for when you're fishing is pretty much inaccessible. It's pretty far from the seat here. And if you were to crawl back here, your kayak would be super unstable. You can do it. I mean, I've gotten back here before, but if you're in the ocean or like in any kind of swell, yeah, just don't do it. You're gonna end up in the water. So anyways, that's where that is. This is kind of just like, you could put stuff in here when you're not on the water. Like if you were, maybe if I was like camping or something, you know, like kayaking to an island and then camping out there, I could put all my camping equipment back here. But other than that, that's not really accessible. But the final piece in the back here is the rudder. So this is the sailing rudder. It's a little bit bigger than the standard rudder that the kayak comes with. And that's gonna allow you to track a little bit better. You know, you could turn a little bit sharper, stuff like that. But that's that. Has the up and down, which you control in the middle. I'll show you that later. All right, and the last part is the middle of the kayak. So this is where, obviously when you're fishing, you spend all your time. And this is where the bulk of my equipment is, especially the add-on stuff. So I'll just do like a point of view version for this part. So this is where you're spending most of your time, as if you were in my kayak. So anyways, on the right side, we have our Garmin Striker 4. This is my fish finder. You know, you figure out how to use a fish finder. With the transducer right here, obviously there's a cord that hooks up to the fish finder, and this transducer is hooked up to a little Scotty track right here, which screws in. It's got 8 screws. If I could do it, you guys can do it. Super easy. This way I can drop that in once I get out there. When I'm landing and launching, I can pull that up so it doesn't drag on the ground. And then there's a rod holder right here behind it. So obviously, there's 2 ports in the fish finder. One is the transducer and the other is the power cord, which is this one right here. So that goes into the fish finder. The other side goes into the hull of my kayak through this little port thing right here. So under the hull, and then if you open the hatch right here, right between the legs, it's kind of hard to see, but here's the power outlet right there. And one thing that I've noticed with power, when you're fishing saltwater, you got to be really careful about the saltwater getting in there, because it can really corrode your terminals. Let's see if that focus there. Those look pretty good for now, but I just replaced that. So anyways, this is a Aqua battery. It's much easier to use than the traditional 12-volt battery, which I was kind of talking about earlier. You just plug it in through this and into that one. It lasts a lot longer, but it is more expensive, so give or take, it's up to you what you want to do. Moving along on the right side, got a handle here, doesn't really mean much. Pliers that I like to keep in here. I'll leash these down because for whatever reason pliers, end up in the water. And then a couple more tie downs there. And then, oh, one thing I forgot up here. So behind the fish finder, it's kind of hard to see. There we go. The little green tab right there. That's to pull down the rudder. So you pull that down, and there's this little thing here. Pull that down, and then drop the leash into this thing. So this thing holds it in place. Cup holder, another Scotty mount. So this is where I put my downrigger when I'm trolling for salmon. I can also put one of these on here. This is just a regular rod holder, rocket launcher rod holder. Slide it in, you can turn it around, angle it back, you can angle it forward if you want. It's up to you, what works best. So there's that. And then obviously the seat that I'm sitting on. And then on the other side, we have another thing here. Oh, also we have the paddle. So a lot of people ask me about the paddle here, why you have the paddle, if you have the pedal drive, which you see right here. And the reason for that is, one, when you're surf launching, you can't have the pedal drive in because it won't, it'll drag on the sand. So you need the paddle to surf launch, or any launch really if you're in shallow water. 2, if this pedal drive ever fails, like a cord breaks or something like that, just stops working, you need the pedals, or the paddles, I should say, as a backup, so you don't get stranded out there. This is the rudder right here, left, right, obviously. Everyone knows how to steer, radio, and then another Scotty mount right here. The nice thing about these Scotty mounts is you can put pretty much anything. You can put a rod holder, I can put my downrigger in this little thing. I just got some rod balancers that I'm gonna put in there for sturgeon fishing. One more rod holder up here. And then, like I said, my pedal drive, which has seen better days, but that's what it looks like. I also like to leash this down, the leash there, just in case when you're taking it out and landing in the surf, something, you flip or something happens and it falls out. You don't want to lose this because this is a pretty expensive piece of equipment. So I leash this down right here. It's hard to do while filming. Whatever, you get the point. I leash it down right there. And then below me, there's a little net here. I don't know, you can put I put my crab gauge in there. All right, so now you can see what I see during the day. This is where I sit for most of my videos, this is what I'm seeing. Yeah, not that exciting here because we're in the garage. Another thing I'll mention is, I didn't really talk about this in the beginning when I was talking about all the kayaks, but this is the one that works best for me, depending on your situation, your body type, how you transport it, where you're gonna be fishing, what you're gonna be fishing for, like so many different variables. Your situation is definitely different from mine. So maybe the Hobie Outback works for you, but maybe it doesn't. Maybe the Pro Angler is better for you. Maybe the accessories you add are gonna be different than mine. This isn't like you need to do it just like me. This is what works best for me because of my situation and the way I'm doing it. But besides all that, I just wanted to say that this setup is what works best for me. You need to think about what's best for you. All right guys, so now that you've seen my full kayak, I just want to say that this is kind of like the basics to get out on the water. There's a few safety things that you need to think about, which I didn't talk about too much in this video. And then if you're gonna be fishing from a kayak, there's a bazillion fishing add-ons that you can get. Like I mentioned, downriggers, rod holders, stuff like that. There's also if you wanna make sure your stuff doesn't fly away if you flip, leashes, floaties, dry bags for all your valuables like your phone and your car keys, stuff like that. So I could go on and on about that stuff, but this is kind of like a rundown, just kind of giving you a brief overview of my kayak and what I've accumulated over the years. Like I said, bare necessity. If you're just gonna get started, this is kind of what you need. If you guys have any questions, leave a comment below. I filmed probably over half of my videos are from this kayak, at least probably around 70% or something. So if you're interested, leave a comment below, or if you have any questions, leave a comment below and I'll talk about it in another video. I'll leave all this gear linked in the description if you want to get anything in particular. You can even buy your Hobie Outback on Amazon nowadays. I'm not sure how that works. I don't know anyone who's tried it, but I'll leave a link to it if you want to check it out. If you're watching this as it's dropped, you probably already know, but if you're maybe watching this later, I'm in the middle of a 12-day, 12-video fishing challenge. This is the first time I didn't do any fishing in the video. So if you're interested in fishing, check out my other 12 videos. I'll leave a link to the playlist in the description. All of them so far from this guy right here. So a lot of good stuff there. But anyways, if you're watching it as it's dropped, thanks for following along, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Thanks for watching.